All right. I'd like to call the Natural Resources Environmental Commission to order on March 26th. Can we get a roll call?
Absolutely, Chair. So first we have Chair Siegel,
Here.
Vice Chair Ng. Here. Commissioner Bortz.
Here.
Commissioner Davila Burke has an excused absence. Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Law.
Here.
And Commissioner Tom.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right. Well, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. So before we get started, are there any public comments in person or on Zoom?
Chair, there were no public comments submitted prior to the meeting, but I'll now open the floor to any in-person or Zoom comments. Do we have any in-person public comments? Any Zoom public comment? Please raise your hand on Zoom if you have a public comment. There were no additional public comments submitted, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, I guess we should probably just jump right in then with our presentation. Are you ready, council member?
Staff get suited up here. This is a presentation I make to the 34 cities I represent in the South Coast Air Quality Management District. This is my opening slide. These are the 34 cities from Santa Clarita, Burbank, Glendale, San Fernando, going east along the 10, the 210, and the 60, all the way to Claremont, the border with San Bernardino County. It's 2 million people. Been on the board now the longest of any city member. It's been since 2008 and just got reelected for another 4-year term. Now the vice chair. Next. So I'm one member of this 13-member board. On the left, since 1976 is when the AQMD started. The gentleman in the far left bottom, black and white picture is then State Representative Jerry Lewis and a congressman after that. Those are petitions from tens of thousands of Inland Empire residents upset at all the smog that was blown over there from Los Angeles back in the 60s and 70s. Said they had a petition to do something about it. So the result, the South Coast AQMD was formed. Before that, there was a Los Angeles Air Pollution Control District. Later on, San Bernardino, Riverside, then Orange County. Then finally said, we're all in the basin. Jerry Lewis said, let's bring them together. So they did. On the right top, there's 4 counties, 17 million people, 13 board members. There's a governor appointee, state senate, assembly appointee, 1 supervisor from every district. From LA County, we have 3. I represent the Eastern San Gabriel Valley or Eastern LA County cities, 34. 1 down in the South Bay area represents Western. LA City has 1 representative on there. Each county has 1 representative from the other counties, Orange, San Bernardino, Riverside. We issue over 20,000 permits for everything from gas stations in South Pasadena, anywhere in our basin, for our police station gas station, public works gas station, dry cleaners. You have a pizza oven, you've got to get a permit for that. The landfills that are giving us a problem right now, Chiquita, up there, Northern LA County, we permit those. A lot of other agencies permit. And at the bottom, you notice 1/3 of all U.S. containerized cargo comes from the twin ports, San Pedro and Los Angeles. You see all the warehouses next. So there's 2 sources of pollution. We break it down. And on the left are stationary sources, which actually the South Coast Air Quality Management District by our legislative charter has regulation over things that don't move again, landfills, power plants, paints, VOCs, a spray booth. I've had some issues with spray booths, permitting them and complaints. Not only auto spray booths, but one of the biggest issues I had was about 10 years ago, a spray booth across from an elementary school in La Puente Hacienda School District. They were upset that the district was permitting a furniture spray booth right across from the school. As I went to the meeting, got there early, I walked to the school grounds, which is about 30, 40 acres. And I indicated to the kids and the parents and the teachers that were there and staff, as our chemists and scientists did, we're going to improve the type of equipment in there. That's why they're doing this, to improve the equipment so less emissions. Ashley said, what kind of lawnmowers do you use to cut your grass? These massive diesel mowers, massive gas equipment. I said, Ashley, during the day when you're operating this equipment, you're polluting this 10 times more than that facility across the street will. So I recommend you change it. They never got back to me. So on the right, we don't do this. We can't control this as federal. You'll see in a moment, and state CARB, EPA and CARB control mobile sources, ocean going vessels, which are a huge source. Airplanes, a big source. Trains, locomotives are a huge source. Heavy duty trucks are really the #1 source of pollution. Diesel trucks, those 18-wheelers, thousands, tens of thousands go through our basin every day. Off-road lawn equipment, farm equipment, huge. Cars, not as much anymore, but still a source. Next. So here's pollution. Here's the 2 areas where we don't comply with federal law, which is a really big problem. You'll see in a moment. On the left, ozone, everybody kind of knows about. That's again produced by cars, vehicles, trucks, ships, locomotives. When that mixes with volatile organic compounds, et cetera, you've got smog. And then you've got the other side, particulate matter, different types, PM10, PM2.5. That gray stick is your human hair. If you look at the different, that little blue ball around there, those globes, that's particulate matter 10. When Ted just walked in, he kicked up particulate matter 10. That's the dust. When I go to the high schools, I have a little monitor there, air quality sensor. And as the kids walk in, I say, guess what? Here's how much you just kicked up a PM10, and we measure it. And then if you go a little higher, in that blue ball, the red globes, that's PM2.5. That goes in, not only goes through your circulatory system, but through your blood-brain barrier. And that's where it enters your organs and can cause really big mischief like cancer does. Even smaller is the little ones, that's ultrafine particulates, and those just are even worse. So these are really terrible types of pollutants, the harm they can do to us in the basin. Next, and you'll see, this is, next one, that's, one more, go on. That's your human body, your family's human body, your kids, your parents, your grandparents. That's what happens when they inhale all these pollutants. Not only the PM2.5, ultrafine particulates, but it goes through your circulatory system like oxygen you inhale, but it's not oxygen. It's nitric oxide, it's benzene, ethylene oxides, et cetera. And they sometimes lodge, and as we're finding out we did the seminal studies actually, millions of dollars. We still got one I'm waiting to find out. Cedar Sinai, Dr. Keith Black was on Time Magazine about 15 years ago. We did it with exposing mice near the freeway to these types of particulates. We found out they even stay in the brain, and it goes from the mother into the baby. So there's cardiovascular, respiratory, lost days from work, et cetera. Next. So here's the impacts. On the left column, we could prevent 1,500 premature deaths in our basin every year, especially from the elderly. Hospitalizations of kids with respiratory problems, there's 8,700 a year. Third column, those are the kids I coached a year or 2 ago that had 3 of them had asthma on my boys under 16 team. The other tens of thousands of juvenile asthmatics in our county and adults too. And health costs are significant, billions of dollars in save hospitalization visits, just the cost of the medicine. I asked the kids whether inhalers, nebulizers, their practice, how much they spent on all the medications, or the parents. Some of our employees have kids with asthma that live nearby. They've had to take them to the hospital several times this year, especially with an asthma attack. Next. And what's happening is there's good news and challenges. So good news is air pollution, the air toxics, the really bad metals and things in the air. Look at the graph on the left. Blue is LA or Fort County Basin. The red is Coachella Valley. Those toxics are going down. Top right, the purple is bad. That's high levels, 2012. And that was 6 years since I've been on the board and other great board members. We've really brought that down, imposing restrictions on heavy, improving technologies out there, heavy duty trucks, cars. We're testing locomotives, et cetera, new fuels in airplanes. So it's getting better, but a long way to go. And if you notice, the purple is kind of from the ports north, go along the 10, 60, 210. That's the corridor of all our goods movement. That's where all the toxics are, those heavy duty trucks and locomotives. Next. So this is it. These are our challenges. You got the heavy duty trucks on the left. On 60 freeway where Diamond Bar offices are, at the junction of the 60 and 57, we've got over 450,000 vehicles a day pass by our office. 450,000. And tens of thousands of those are heavy duty trucks, medium duty trucks, just billowing pollution. The planes that come in are huge sources of pollution, carrying goods too. The locomotives, Union Pacific, Burlington Northern, I've met with them, our staff met with them, trying to work with them. No fruition, so we're probably going to try to implement a rule. We tried it 20 years ago. The federal government said we didn't have the power to do it. We think we do now. We're going to take them on, work with them. We tried to work with them, to work with an agreement. They didn't listen. So the ships are major sources, especially idling out there off the coast. Next. This is where I think Chair, I think you wanted to know, these are really the three areas, the groups, agencies that regulate pollution. On the left, the US EPA, and you probably saw in the news last couple of days, just passed stricter rules on cars, light duty trucks and vans, the toughest in the nation starting 2027. On the left, the federal square, they had national air quality standards. They regulate things that move, those ships and planes and airplanes, especially the ships coming in. You know, they're international. They can regulate what comes in, how fast they come in, which can impact pollution. It says sanctions on states. That's a big thing we'll talk about in a moment. Middle's CARB, the California Air Resources Board, which is kind of our lead agency or boss. They regulate mobile sources too, like the feds. They provide great incentive programs. They had a $27 million for lawn equipment. The last couple of years we supported technologies, mobile sources. That's the AQMD on the right. We regulate stationary sources. We do a lot of incentives. We stick our nose in some of those mobile sources. A lot of times we get sued by truckers and other people. But so here's what happens. What happens if we don't meet these federal clean air standards established by the federal government? There's significant impacts on our basin. Far left, stationary sources in green. You want to open a restaurant with a pizza oven, you want to get a broiler for your factory or something like that. You want a landfill, you want a gas station, just want a business that's got something that's emitting pollution. The federal government will force us to double your permit, whether it's $100, $200, or $500 to $1,000. That money will be used to give incentive to clean up, buy cleaner things. Second, we could lose, that was a year or two ago, we can lose up to $1 billion federal highway fund. No more light rail, no more mass transit, just they'll take it away from us. Finally, the worst one is federal implementation plan. Our director was a former Region 9 EPA administrator for the Western United States. He had a plan against LA at one time. It was never implemented. It was a draft plan that on Mondays, only even number cars, Tuesday, odd number cars on our freeways. Same with ocean-going vessels coming into our ports. Never implemented, but came very close. And this is why next year, up in 2028, 2030, you see a 2031, there's last year, 2037. If we don't meet these standards for reducing smog, ozone, particulate matter, who's ever in office in Washington, D.C., and maybe not a friend of ours, can implement some of these against the South Coast. That's why it's really serious what could happen in the next couple of years. Next. So there's good news. We have a lot of programs on the left. We ran out of this money for a clean air furnaces rebate program. Hopefully institute that again very soon. We've got about $20, $30 million we're going to do in like residential and commercial appliance program. We're kind of batting back and forth on the board what to do with that. Still have a residential lawnmower program. You get up to $250 off for state-of-the-art residential electric lawnmower. Just turn your old one in. Got to replace the gas one. Third one, EV charger. We still give, now we're giving $500, but you've got to be below a certain income amount. We still give it to everybody. And now you get $500 below a certain amount. You get a level 2 EV charger. On the right, you want to get an electric bike, electric car, plug-in hybrid. We're going to raise that. It's $9,500. We've tentatively approved $12,000. You're still going through the process. At the bottom, you see we're doing our program for home appliances next. So good thing too, there's a lot of money available from grants from AQMD, from the state. We implement a lot of grants. We got that little van right there, the South Pass van with a significant, almost half price off electric shuttle van from AQMD with money. Trucks get it, lawn equipment gets it, etc. Next. So there's good news. There's all these investments in South Pasadena from the AQMD. We've got some money, $38,000 for some equipment there. From the MSRC, that's money we get every year. That's set in a big pool. And we've applied over the years during that time period. We've got one of the most of all the cities I represent, $1.3 million. Part of that was, I mean, you have to go up there and look close. Those are for open streets. And one year, we didn't have this great staff we have today. But this was about 9 or 10 years ago. We were doing a trail along the Arroyo there. I had mentioned to staff, weeks and weeks, do something, we'll apply for this grant. There's grants for bike paths. The day of the final funding, I found out we hadn't applied. I had one of my consultants write out the application. We still got $150,000, but could have got 500. So grants from AQMD, from the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, paid over 60-75% of that trail. So the CNG shuttle vans we have now turning to electric, all that came from AQMD money. The chargers across the street, AQMD money. And then again, every quarter we get money from the car registration in the city. And that goes for, again, it's got to be things that move, mobile sources. but we get that money coming in every 3 months. There's telework program, things like that. Next. On the left, if you, a small business needs assistance, we want to keep people in business in this space. We want to lose business. We want to work together. So if they need assistance, we have a direct number they can call. We got our staff, our enforcement staff will go out and work with them to comply, to help them out. But if you got a complaint, like some of my cities did, that's right. I went to San Fernando. Other cities, they had comments about the cement factory on the border of LA and San Fernando and the dust and odors. We sent our staff out there and they weren't following their permit. We issued warnings, and people who don't follow their permits, they'll get a warning. Could be these landfills, power plants, sanitation districts Ted knows about. We're having a problem with one now that Sepulveda, as you know. The city of Los Angeles, we're getting fined all the time. They're trying to clean it up. We've got a mobile app, so if you travel, just have your app. Whatever city you go in, it'll tell you the air quality. We've got monitors, about 40 proximate monitors throughout our 4-county basin. Some are multi-pollutant monitors. We're funded by EPA and Department of Homeland Security. In case there's an attack, chemical attack, the monitors will get it right away. And finally, we've got one of the only, it's called Air Quality Specs Sensor Performance Evaluation Center, where we can examine the sensors that are in the market. You bring it to our facility, we'll tell you if it works or not. Last one, was that the last one? And that's it. So I have consultants, 3 or 4, several consultants work for me, and I go to all my cities. We have events up. If you ever want to come visit the district, we have, bring you up on a Friday afternoon sometime. We'll get you lunch, do a tour of our laboratories, some of the best in the nation, meet our scientists, chemists. We're rebuilding, actually rebuilding our entire hydrogen fueling station. We'd have sometimes 60, 70 cars that are lined up at night. Going to double the size, the capacity, and speed. And our charging stations, we've got several hundred in our entire facility, and see some of our videos. Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. First, I just want to say, knowing the 7-hour ordeal you went through last week, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for showing up. I bet you're very tired, so thank you for putting the time and energy to come down and give us this presentation and answer questions. Before we open it up, one of the reasons why I asked for this to be on is knowing that we may want to revise some of the priorities in our climate action plan, and understanding that there are many grants out there from the EPA, from local like AQMD and CARB. It would be good for our commission to understand what is out there and what's available, and it might direct some of your questions moving forward. So before I open it up, I guess we should look if there's any public comments.
Absolutely, Chair. Do we have any public comment on Zoom? If you have a public comment, please raise your hand. There are no participants on Zoom, Chair. Any in-person public comments? And there are no in-person public comment.
All right, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay, open the floor. Let your questions fly.
I've got one. What do you see as like the next, I guess, attainable, either ordinance, or what should we be looking to do in terms of on the city level to improve our air quality locally?
A lot of things is going back to 2005 when I proposed and council approved the first low emission vehicle purchase policy, because there really weren't electric vehicles. And it got there, but things like that were just push the council on our policies, even though we've got the advanced clean fleets rule, which require us, and unless you keep pushing, it's going to just be slow transition. Things like that. Our fleet should be transitioning like the police are. And Ted knows sometimes in certain industries, whether it's public works or others, I was just in Glendale today at a function, the second AGSA green zone, and the largest city now in the United States. Glendale just turned over all their electric lawn equipment maintenance fleet, copying us. But without these type of pressure and like public works, it took 5 years for them to get around, because there was institutional level. We've all used gas. We're going to use gas, and Ted's dealt with a lot in the public works, which are great people, but they just haven't been educated on the harmful impacts. So something like that, or even appliances. With our program, we're going to have a lot of, we're still only one vote, but we're talking about, we need recommendations from the public. So if you even want to come testify there, give us some ideas. We really want to work on some of the lower income areas, but our area too could use it too. I'll think about, I haven't thought about that, think of other areas. But again, the big things are it's even bigger than us. It's when you talk about the 18-wheelers, the heavy duty trucks, they don't just go down to 60 quarter. They're dropping off at Bonds, at Pavilions, at Trader Joe's. I mean, you go by Bristol Farm sometimes. I walk around there a lot. A lot of you do. And you'll just see truck after truck coming and idling there. These are heavy duty trucks that, aren't just on the trade corridors, but they're in our neighborhoods every day, just idling there. So that's a big, and even the locomotives that go through here, when you go down Alhambra, as you go over Mission by the Alhambra, there's dozens of trains that come through every day from the ports. And those locomotives, whether it's Burlington Northern, Union Pacific, are just billowing out, just billowing diesel, and it's just blowing in our basin within a few miles of us. I'll think of something, but I haven't thought of it yet, Commissioner. Great question. Just stifle me.
I'd ask a couple of questions. You mentioned the impact, and it's very well measured, of course, for what the big rigs do and the ships do. But there's also something I'm concerned about, which is the accumulated impact of everyone's personal automobile, which is obviously not at the same scale. We know that it's smaller, but it is still, it accumulates. And one thing I read about recently was that in the EU, they actually have a monitoring program for electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicles.
Mm.
And they're actually measuring the impact, much as what AQMD is trying to do in the lab and so on, but they do it in the cars that are in the fleet out in the streets. And they're finding that at least the carbon emissions, I think probably maybe also maybe emissions of other kinds are several times higher than the documented, in lab sort of, or in, advertised pollution levels. And a lot of it, I think in terms of the carbon emission, is at least due to the fact that people don't actually charge their plug-in hybrids. So that's a big problem. But it is becoming pretty clear that, personal automobiles are a big problem, and they're not going to go away anytime soon because we're just so dependent on them. One place I think about that a lot is actually when I drop off my kids at school every day.
On Fair Oaks?
I'm actually on El Centro.
I thought I saw you in Fair Oaks on Monday morning. Looked like you in the car. I was riding my bike by and I thought it was you. Maybe it wasn't.
Oh, no.
Glad I didn't say hi. Go on.
But at Arroyo Vista, we actually, much as we do at all the schools in the city, we have a drop-off lane, which is serviced by volunteers at the school. And not only is it hazardous to people, but it's emitting pollution directly into our campuses because the cars are queued up right when all of the students are coming and going to our schools. So I think it would be great to think about just entirely removing cars from the picture if it's at all possible. That's a big ask, but I would welcome your thoughts on how we can do that at a local level, at least preserving air quality near schools or places where people are frequently walking and are impacted by that.
I agree with you. I mean, you saw the other night at the council meeting, we had difficulty getting a bike lane in. You had a vote from me. That was it. And there was pressure from the community, unbelievable pressure to stand up to, and it just didn't happen. But, I went to the schools 2021, asked for a meeting at the Arroyo Vista in the outside by the grass. I wanted to say, listen, we've been doing since 2015, 16, our entire city electric lawn equipment. And your schools all around. And the kids are in class when these people from, it's Brightview, the largest in the nation, lawn maintenance company nationally. And they're just blowing these nitric oxide, carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, carbon dioxide, oxygen. That's what comes out of gas. And plus all the others. Those are the main ones we used to test at Bureau of Automotive Repair. I said, well, why can't you transition? And it was a fight for an hour and a half there. We had Dan May with American Regional Alliance. We had all the equipment, still, Husqvarna, the best equipment we had. And this isn't some 500-acre mountain. This is a flat area, and they still fought us. Were you there? That's right. You Commissioner was there. You remember that? And then there was a break for half an hour. They went in, discussed, well, we'll look at maybe transitioning some of the handheld power equipment. About a year later, thanks, Commissioner, there were some trends because I would ride the bike every Monday, go to Holy Family. And I actually I stopped, and they were using backpack battery at the middle school. And I saw them one day using it at Marengo. So I don't know if they've changed. I've tried, I've called many times. And I've even years ago, they're finally getting solar. I brought that up like 10 years ago. They're finally getting solar now. I'm not sure what to do unless we all go to like one of their meetings and just demand things. So I don't know, Casey. I've been a proponent with you, but I've hit a wall sometimes.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate your leadership on it, and including last week. I do feel like if we could be as angry as an angry neighbor, they see a bike lane go in, but do that every day, I think we'd have progress. But it's just difficult because it is it's a slow moving problem that we're all facing. And so we don't always see the impact as obviously as someone who might be upset by a bike lane being painted on their street.
This commission does when you're out there leading bike rides like you've done and kids to school, people talk about it and it's just slowly changing, just ingrained minds that are, fossil fuel based. So you're the leaders. I'm really impressed.
Thanks. I wanted to ask just one more question. I saw a study, and I really should have a citation for this. I think it was First Street. It's like a insurance company,
Mhm.
and they're studying air pollution over many decades. And there's a trend generally for decreasing air pollution over the last many decades. Thanks to your work and others, except in California in the last 5 years. So their analysis shows that there's actually been an increase in fine particulate air pollution specifically in California, and it's traced to fires.
Exactly.
So is that totally outside of scope of what AQMD can do?
It is. And plus those are meteorological conditions that we have no control over with the wind pushing it and climate change. But we've even we restarted one of our committees about 2 months ago on climate change. And the supervisor, Manny Perez from Riverside, is chairing it, but I'm pushing a lot too. I had a meeting just a few weeks ago with a local church, talked about the schools. So I had a meeting with the new pastor, Holy Family says, the Pope came out just a couple months ago saying, I had something in 2015 after the Paris Climate Accords, encourage the Catholics and other churches to follow, faith communities to follow or look at this. Came out in this October 2023, said, 8 years ago I said this, nothing's happened. This is serious stuff now. And he's all science, all the UN. So, if I can get my nose in the door and make a model of like one of these church or their faith communities and just try to spread it throughout the basin, and the Catholic Church would be the diocese, even call the Pope, try to get him involved. But yeah, we're shooting high.
Thank you.
I have a clarifying question on the PowerPoint. CARB regulates mobile sources. AQMD regulates stationary sources. But I noticed that AQMD also gives out a ton of rebates for mobile sources and transportation, EV cars and bikes, e-bikes and train passes. So how does that work if it's on stationary sources, if you regulate stationary sources?
We're not prevented, we're not prohibited from giving out investments. We just can't try to regulate them. So before I got on the board, apparently there was a huge effort to work with locomotives that were just idling. Yeah, I'm only talking about freight locomotives. I'm not even talking about Metrolink, which I bring this up that none of my mayors ever get it in the cities. But I say, how many Metrolink and Amtrak trains go through our basin every day? And I think I brought up to you. Do you remember? Let me ask you. So Metrolink, they start downtown, right? You got ones that go out to San Bernardino. That's the big line along the 10, LA College. You see, what is it called? University of California, Los Angeles, and a bunch of them all the way out. I actually use those to go to my cities. And then with Orange County, Santa Clarita, I take that one to Santa Clarita, get on my bike, ride to the meeting. And then Ventura, Orange County, et cetera. You got Amtrak. So you got about 225 to 30 just passenger, and every one of those is diesel. Only in the last couple of years have they started working on some biodiesel. I got to check and see what the components are, but that's a huge issue too. So we gave close to $100 million over the last 15 years to Metrolink to upgrade from the worst tier, and these locomotives last like 50 years, to like it was about 50 or 60 clean tier 4, the cleanest diesel powered locomotives on the market. So improved dramatically. That's why you probably saw those toxics go down. That's 250, 225 diesel locomotives every day. That doesn't count. There's like 120 or 30 coming from the ports and then coming from the South San Diego. So if you get to an area in San Bernardino County, I'm forgetting the name now, there's a place there where they all cross. There was a big fight with Wyatt Earp in the state. It's really a fun historical story. Wyatt Earp was involved with the local mayors. The governor had to come down, and there was a fight, actually a standoff at this crossing from the north, going north, south, east, west to get over that. And it was finally no gunshots, but all those trains come through and some just idle for hours. So we can give money as incentives, but the moment we try to regulate, like we did trains, got to the U.S. Supreme Court, he said there's some federal law which supersedes what you're trying to do, so you can't do it. So we're going to try again because there's been some amendments to that law. So if we can't come to an agreement with the railroads, which we've tried over the last, I mean, I had the executives from Burlington Northern and Union Pacific at our offices. A month later, I had the top people from the ports. So it's tough, as you've seen with just a neighborhood bike lane. Imagine trying to get the two busiest ports in the United States to try to comply with air quality standards, and the power they have to lobby or get rid of board members is intense.
Well, so that's good to know, that a community can also give mobile sources rebates. And
Happy
so
to do it.
how does that work then? I'm not sure if, how much detail you know about CARB, but anything that would overlap between a rebate between CARB and AQMD, do the two teams work together? Or are they?
We work together. We
Okay.
sometimes most of the time we work together well. Sometimes there's disagreements, like in family. There's we're trying to comply with federal law. Even when we're trying to regulate the airport, the locomotives, they also regulate the locomotives. And there were some issues as we were trying to pass a rule. We're trying to negotiate with them. They were trying to pass a rule, and sometimes they don't want us to negotiate. They want us to just look at rules. So it was there were some disagreements on philosophy, but both of our missions are to clean up the air.
Excellent. So with that in mind, my next couple of questions are about rebates and grant money that might be available, and knowing that, air pollution and, tying it to this conversation and our cap and what we can do about it as a city requires infrastructure projects. And we are in a fiscal crisis as a city, so that if anything we were going to do would come from grants
Right.
and outside money. And so knowing that, what support does, besides the grant money itself or the money that's made available that has to be applied to, is there anything that CARB or AQMD would provide staff of a city to help obtain that, whether it's in writing those grants, matching funds for another grant, any sort of help to city staff?
Ted knows this well. As we got the $500,000 for the police electrification. I mean, it's staff's there to assist, and they're pretty good assisting AQMD staff with whether it's Ted working with them or Tony, our police department, on that grant application. But it's difficult. That money came from, again, the money each of you put in for your car registration, that goes into a city. Our city gets 40% of that, $4. AQMD gets 30%, and we can give it any way we want, but it's got to be mobile sources, not something stationary for that. And then 30% goes into a pot for all 4 counties. We drew from that pot for all 4 counties. The reason we got it, I was going to their meetings and they were looking at some new programs or categories for funding. Myself and an LA County person said, why don't we do transformative transportation, something different that nobody's done? Did it. And then our staff started going to the meetings, testifying. They created that program. We applied. We got the first grant of anybody. Then they took about another 20 grants and kind of looked through them and gave some more out. But those grants are there. When this MSRC Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Committee meets, which is by statute, members from the 4 counties, every couple of years they say, what do we want to support or fund? They usually have $15 to $20 million a year. Sometimes it's built up to $50 to $75 million. Example, for the past years, they funded, anybody go to the Dodger game, the Dodger Express? We funded that, millions of dollars every year for like the last 7 or 8 years. I started bringing up, we got to reduce that. That's fine. It's a given. People are doing it, but let's wean them off there. And the Dodgers can pay some of that. They're making a lot of money. We did the train, the Metrolink, all the way down to Angel Stadium. We fund, there's just the trains. We gave Metrolink a bunch of money. There's a lot of money they fund. A couple of years ago, I didn't have enough support in the board. This was probably 5 years ago. They had $50 million and they were going to support warehouses in our basin, infrastructure, like you said, Chair. And all of a sudden, the powers from the Inland Empire wanted to take all the money to San Bernardino Riverside, which there's a lot of warehouses. From the history, we've got more warehouses than they do. They're building 500 times as fast. We still got more warehouse space, LA County, Orange County. When the vote came up to take all that money, put it there, I stopped the vote and said, can we re-examine this and at least give 20% to, I've got 300 warehouses, one city I represent, City of Industry. Pomona's got like 30. Arcadia's got 4 or 5 on the border with El Monte. So I've got close to 400 warehouses in my district. I got no support in the board. I don't know what happened. What happened before the meeting, what was discussed, and all that money that year went to the Inland Empire. So there's a grant right now by California Energy Commission. It closes April 5th for fleets, cities, small municipal governments, et cetera, to apply for infrastructure for their fleet. That money's there to pay for most of that. I'm not sure if we have, Ted's, secured money for medicine with the Charge Ready program. He's worked on that. I think he's got a meeting tomorrow morning, maybe. I want to talk to you about that later. I want to go and just listen. But it takes staff time. I mean, those meetings, I sat in for like 5 or 6 before it came to the point where they set it up and then turned it over to staff and they just took it through with a home run. And we got the money. No other city did that.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of my point that I'm wondering how, as a city, we could do it better. I mean, we only have so much staff resources, and there's a lot of grant money out there ripe for the taking that we couldn't possibly know, all of it that's available. So how do we help staff realize, one, what is available that actually could help our city, and then two, give them the resources to write, apply, help implement everything to get those grants.
I think a lot of you, I know you're well read and you read up on these, you read about a program that comes available, let us know. We'll hopefully look at staff who's overworked to try to reprioritize something. We're council members. All of us belong on regional boards. So the mobile crisis van that we have, mobile crisis mental health van, that wouldn't have happened if about 4 years ago, Diana Mamu was on the homeless committee. We were talking about this. She got off the council. I left the Attorney General's office because I saw these opportunities. And I had to go to 8 o'clock meetings. I couldn't be in court and do the same. So I left that. And that's how we got this $250,000 to have that mobile crisis van operating 4 days a week and an outreach van on every Monday. Wouldn't have happened. John sits on these regional for the Royal Verdugo Joint Powers Authority. They bring in money for transportation. The San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments met those meetings all the time. There's money available for our food program. We just got, because I saw it on an agenda item about a grant for $250,000 for all the cities in San Gabriel Valley for food programs in the community. We got 50,000. Just Marlene at Holy Family and Sergeant Lieutenant Labredo and myself wrote the grant in a couple hours. We got the money. It's tough to be out there everywhere. There's so many chair. It's just try to get it to us. We've been when you see the cities, and I have this list for every city I represent. Here's all the 34 cities in the mayor. It was Glendale where I was today. There's 5 representatives at the city manager, all their information. We're one of the highest cities in securing grants of any cities I've got. And the amount of money we don't use, one of those last charts is the amount of money left in our budget from the AB 2766. I think we got 32,000. Several cities had over 400,000 or 500,000. One city, I'm not going to say because I know the mayors and everybody, they didn't know what the money was for. It was sitting there, just sitting there. After the meeting, city manager got on with me. We got on with our staff for a couple hours, and they knew how to use the money then. But our city is one of the most responsive, intelligent about these grants. Again, I've got dozens of cities that have $250,000 just sitting there they're not using. And I don't know why.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of indicative of maybe better, like, how as a city could we funnel resources to claim that untapped, because it sounds like there's a lot of untapped money that is not being used that we could somehow get a hold of, but because we are limited in such resources, how do we supplement the staff as a city to help realize some of that?
I think there's a budget process. You may want to push for keeping person writing grants. It's tough. I mean, our staff can only do, as a line deputy, I can only do so much. When the governor or new AG came in and said, here's our new policies, you just can't be piling things on staff where there's a mass exodus.
Well, from then let's take it from the AQMD's perspective. Is there something that a new process that might be able to be implemented that helps city staff that are under-resourced to give them a better chance of claiming some of this money?
You know, they're always welcome to call me or call our staff. Our staff for the region is Rainbow Yoon, who lives in Arcadia nearby, hard worker. Rainbow always sends out emails, usually right before a grant becomes available. I'll get a copy, then all my cities get a copy. And I think sometimes the staff get a copy. Yeah, she's really good. She gets what our people on staff. They're good. So it is hard. Grants come up, sometimes very competitive. But if there's easier money, we'll be on top of it right away. And look what we got, you know, in those 12 years or so, you know, $1.3 million is a lot.
Yeah. Since we're talking about our climate action plan, we also have our green action plan. Does the rebates and the grant money from, let's say AQMD, does it help if the way that these plans are written to better position yourself for getting the grant money?
It depends again, what's the grant? Sometimes we apply to the federal government for a lot of grants. Our staff's really busy now. We partner with Tesla to try to get grants for heavy duty trucks between us and Texas. We just fell short. So I was just up in Reno and then Sparks, Nevada, where they've got they call it the pilot heavy duty truck They produce about 20 heavy duty electric trucks that have a 400 to 500 mile range. I've seen them on the freeway up there. They're intense. They've got the best charging systems in the world. They're building the big factory that's full time just down the street. They got their gigafactory. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think again, as we look to our cap and potentially reprioritizing and trying to find those items that we could realistically complete, wondering if there's anything in the way the cap is written itself that might.
If we get federal grants, we try to pepper throughout the region. We did one EPA grant, targeted airshed grant, they call it. We got the feds wanted us to send it to Coachella Valley. We put $7 million for commercial lawn equipment. I think this week coming to the board, I didn't get to that meeting last Friday. It's another committee. I think the technology committee is making a recommendation. Take some of the money they didn't use, give it back to the rest of the region for other cities. I'll be in Irvine in a few weeks as they're looking at following South Pasadena and Glendale and converting all their their lawn maintenance to electric. So we'll keep you abreast, and then staff will keep us abreast, and if we can even keep up with some of those timelines.
And then I guess this question goes to staff as well as you as a council member. You have 7 people on this commission who obviously are very invested in the city. What can we do to help you guys take advantage of any of the money that's available to realize some of these projects that are coming down?
And one thing is, again, when you have it before the board, we had this for the police vehicle electrification. When it came up for a vote among the MSRC members from the 4 counties, I wasn't on that. But as a board member, I'd bring it up. Have a police officer or Ted or somebody be there to testify meant a lot. From their authority, everybody respected our staff. And I could see as it finally came for a final vote, it went through. They were all just cheering us on when it came to our board. Everybody's like a catch already. That's his city. And they were just so proud of our staff for working this through all the way through. So yeah, you testify at some of the meetings. Let us know if we have time. We'll work on it. I want to highlight, Mr. Chair, Emily. She got one of I'm able to give out a couple of scholarships every year as an AQMD board member. In the summer, we have a summer internship program. Used to be able to have eight students. Now they've cut me down to 2 or 3. They had too many. But I would get some from our school here and some from Glendale, all around. It had to be my cities, but I would always give South Pass a precedence. But all my cities got a lot. And Emily and a couple others, I think Mr. Zavala, Diego Zavala and others, they were so dedicated in that summer. I said, I would like you guys to take the mass transit with me to the board meeting. They met me a couple of times at like 5:45 on Mission here when we had the 176 bus. They took 3 buses with me. 5:45, I took still got pictures of them. 6:15 at the El Monte Transit Station. I think it was like 7:15 at the farm at Cal State is at Pomona, Cal Poly Pomona. And then when we dropped off at about 8:15 at the Diamond Bar. So honored by one of your members here, former scholarship awardee and mass transit advocate.
Any other questions, comments?
Chair, in response to one of the questions that you had, as someone who works a lot in the funding space in my daytime job, both funding grant preparation and funding strategy preparation as well. There are various, at least statewide, grant programs who more and more are offering technical assistance. So that is a sort of a tack on to the regular grant application. So those are some things that we can look for in the future. However, the state really is prioritizing low-income disadvantaged communities, but also acknowledging smaller, under-resourced communities.
All right, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I would like to thank Councilmember Cacciatti for coming out and giving this presentation his time. Again, we really appreciate it, and we look forward to working together to do what we can to reduce the air pollution, obviously region-wide, but in our city. So thank you. All right, we have a discussion up next about a plastics ad hoc.
Good evening, commissioners. So the next item on our agenda, we do have listed as an action item. However, with further discussion with our city attorney, this is going to be more of a discussion item. And it is to form a plastics reduction ad hoc committee. So the commission's fiscal year 23-24 work plan has several tasks on there, including the implementation of organics recycling with SB 1383, reviewing and approving a water conservation program, reviewing the tree ordinance, et cetera. However, we don't currently have anything regarding plastics reduction. So this was a concern that was brought up by several commissioners. And in order to ensure that we are keeping plastics reduction in mind and continuing to work towards implementing initiatives and finding ideas and how we can make South Pasadena a plastic-free city, as described in the city's Green Action Plan, we're here to form a plastics reduction ad hoc committee. So this ad hoc committee will have the specific goal of implementing those tasks outlined in the city's Green Action Plan. There were other additional plastics-related concerns that were brought up that we can also add to the duties of this ad hoc committee, including re-educating and reinforcing the city's plastic bag ban, as well as informing and educating our businesses on the current state laws on customers having to opt in for to-go items. So the Plastics Reduction Ad Hoc Committee will be an informal and voluntary committee that will meet outside of the NREC. And they can bring up topics that they would like to discuss with the rest of the commission during a public NRAC meeting. So at this time, I'd like for you all to have a discussion on confirming the duties of this ad hoc committee, and then would love to ask for volunteers to participate in the committee. We would have 2 and no more than 3 commissioners on that ad hoc committee. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help. Otherwise, please do discuss.
Commissioner Jones, would you like to start since you were one of the members of the previous committee, ad hoc committee?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about the rules, and but that said, I'm interested in continuing to informally meet and discuss these items, plastics items that affect the city. Are we limited in what initiatives we can discuss, or can we discuss whatever initiatives regarding plastics that
I think that we want to try our best to assist in the implementation of the specific
Okay.
tasks that we already have in place,
Mhm.
especially because they are a part of a city plan,
Mhm.
which is a part of the city's strategic plan.
Yeah.
So we are, you're absolutely, you know, allowed to discuss anything else that we can do that might not be
Mhm.
specifically on that plan. However, when it comes to implementation, it might not take priority. But it really just depends. So, certainly you can talk about whatever plastics reduction ideas or examples you can get from other cities. I think that would be helpful. Should we, one day want to update the plan or talk about the next fiscal year's work plan for the commission? However, when it does come to, what the staff can implement and what we can really move forward on, it would be most likely the items that we currently have in our plans.
Okay. I did want to comment on just sort of how over the last few years, and this could happen in the future as well, because of what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of initiatives that were up and running and working. I mean, there was like a complete, it completely devolved into a whole other different issue. And so when we discussed when we were discussing our plastics thing during our ad hoc discussion, one thing that we focused a lot on was how much restaurants have changed and how much more waste there is coming from restaurant service. And if one of the initiatives was because takeout has increased so much, and that's on our priority list, is the opt out or opt in for plastics. But the other was to, in that same vein, to look at requiring restaurants that have sit down service to have reusable items. And so I don't know if we could just pair that with that one or if it's a separate one, but it is definitely like I mean, I respect the fact that we have a plan in place, but things come along and things happen
Absolutely.
and then that can throw everything off track. So there's got to be a little wiggle room in there for like just getting us back to normal.
Sure.
Does that make sense? And I think that initiative in which sit down service is, they're required to use reusable or, I don't know, plastic free, compostable stuff. Something in that vein makes all the sense in the world considering that things changed since we made the plan. So that's just a comment. I do want to continue meeting as an ad hoc to help supplement or inform our discussions here. So if anybody else is interested, that would be wonderful.
Just some clarifying questions, Murphy. So it would be voluntary and the goal would be to come up with some potential solutions that would be brought to the commission, correct? And then we would have an official agenda item about that to give recommendations back to staff, back to council, like what would be the next step after that?
I guess it would depend exactly on what that actual solution may be. So, I mean, for example, if we're talking about requiring, sit down service to have to not use plastics, that's an ordinance. So, if we're talking about an ordinance, then yes, that's something that would require an NRAC um, um, recommendation. Then it's got to go to council. So yes, that would have a whole process. If we're talking about maybe implementing some of the ideas that we got from City of LA's Jennifer Pinkerton, who came by and had some great ideas on some easy programs or policies that we can implement in-house. That might be something that comes up during a discussion and then is just talked to staff about possibilities of implementing those. So it really depends on what it is.
Would it help then for this ad hoc committee to separate those items which might be just the staff and others that, so that they could be two separate discussion topics at a meeting? Or does it matter? Would we figure it out as we talk?
I think it's something we figure out as we go. Yeah. What do you mean by separate though? Do you mean
So
have certain?
let's say the ad hoc committee comes up with 7 items.
Okay.
3 of them are potential ordinances or things that would require legal to look at and eventually go to council. And others would be smaller items that could just go to staff for potential implementing
Right.
programs.
Mhm.
Would it be best to separate those into separate discussions so that when recommendations are made, it's a little easier to say these 4 just are for staff, and then these 4, we recommend that
Mhm.
they go to legal, they go to council, they go to.
Well, 2 things that I would think is that I think that the discussions should be looked at as a whole, just to see like what things overlap and what, how that would look. And also, my train of thought. If you're, yeah, it's really going to be on a case by case basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to think about when we eventually come and revisit this topic, how we'd want to set up the agenda for that.
Yeah. And we can certainly talk about that
Mhm.
with chair and vice chair and see how we want to approach that.
And would the ad hoc committee would meet monthly as well? Is that how?
That would
I-
be up to the ad hoc
Oh, okay.
committee.
There's
It
no,
is
like,
an
formality.
informal
Okay.
meeting, voluntary, that happens outside of the NRAC.
What's that? Daily. Every Friday night. I would be interested in being a part of that.
Thank you for volunteering.
I have one other thing I wanted to clarify. So we have listed the reinforce the plastic bag ban, the opt-in for plastics
Mhm.
as the other one. What was the third?
Third is just taking a look at the green action plan and the items that we have there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and anything on there.
Me-
Those other 2 that we're listing separately, I know
Mhm.
is not included in the green action plan,
Mhm.
but I know is an important topic for the commission, and so.
Okay,
Wanted to
so,
ask.
but wasn't one of them having zero waste, have all city events be zero waste?
Yes, which is included in the green action plan.
That is?
Yes.
Okay, and that's also an ordinance that was established in LA, the one that Jennifer Pinkerton
There you go.
introduced to us. So I'm just wondering, in terms of using a template for, for something moving forward, I think that should definitely be a priority of ours too.
That would be up to the ad hoc committee
Okay,
to decide.
all right then.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it's a little.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had a comment on the, for consideration by the ad hoc, whoever
Mhm.
might get involved. I think seeing a big sort of menu of, on this page is very intimidating because there's so many things we could do. And often I think when you're presented with so many options, like the focus of the discussion might get very easily bogged down in just like, which one do you pick? I think in practice, in my experience, just knowing how difficult it is to educate people, the education is usually like gets the least attention in any sort of policy. Because you can imagine LA gives us the ordinance, we could just pick one in one meeting. You could imagine an ad hoc could spend a lot of time on education and finding the leaders in every, the business community or whatever the right community is, and then spending the months on the education side, right? To actually make it implement well. So I guess I would just, my discussion contribution, I guess would be to say, I hope the ad hoc can really think about the right education, what the right network is of people to actually implement a policy properly, because all of them are going to be somewhat sensitive for somebody. And there's always a chance that there's someone out there with the veto power that's just going to, repeat the thing. So I would encourage the ad hoc to move beyond the selection and
Yeah.
think a lot about.
So maybe we should be identifying resources to help bolster our initiatives as well.
Yeah, right.
Right.
If it's community groups or if
Yeah.
it's, just, funding the right people, could be very critical to the success of any policy.
Well, with that vein, since this is outside of NREC, would the ad hoc committee be able to then select members that are not on this commission and in potentially the business community that is impacted to join their ad hoc?
No. No, there would not be, you would not be allowed to have anyone outside of the commission on the ad hoc committee.
But other commissions?
I'm sorry?
Are other commissions allowed? Members of other commissions?
Oh, to join the ad hoc committee? I don't believe so. Yeah. From my understanding, it's, NREC is forming, it's just the commissioners on the NREC who want to talk separately on a specific issue.
For anyone who might be interested, do you have any other additional questions to see if you might want to join the ad hoc committee? I think we could potentially fit one more.
Okay.
And if we do not, then I think we have 2 volunteers.
Mhm.
There is no official selection. And the next step would be for them to informally meet
Yes.
and then come back with a potential agenda. And we will agendize it at a meeting.
Yes, sir.
Good? All right.
Thank you.
No motions. That being said, we didn't take any public comment ahead of time. I imagine we have to be, as a discussion, we should probably take some public comment now.
Do we have any in-person public comments pertaining to the selection of plastics ad hoc committee? Do we have any comments via Zoom? We have no public comment, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to volunteers for volunteering. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our last meeting, which was extremely short, so the minutes should be pretty easy to peruse. And if anyone has a motion to make on those minutes.
I will move to approve the minutes of the February.
Wonderful. So we have a motion by Commissioner Law and we have a second by Commissioner Tom. I will now do a roll call. Chair Siegel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ink,
Yes.
Commissioner Boards,
I'll abstain. I wasn't there.
Commissioner Davila Burke, it has an excused absence. Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Law,
Yes.
and Commissioner Tom. Thank you. The approval of minutes passes with the approval of our commissioners. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to our next agenda item. Our city council liaison communications. You talked enough. All right, we'll move on to our commission communications. Commissioner Bortz, we'll start on this side.
I guess I would just like to comment publicly since it's been a part of my life for the last few months. But I was on my way here this evening and I saw that the removal of the safe streets infrastructure and the bike lane on Grand Avenue and has actually already begun. So it's sort of a sad day, I think, for our city. We're taking a step backwards in the year after we've had the warmest, mean surface temperature on the earth, moving more towards car dependency. In a part of the country where people just aren't even safe to be outside of their cars or even in the cars because of speeding and reckless behavior. So I really hope that we as a city can find a way to lead and not continue to move backwards. So I just wanted to acknowledge that happened today. Thanks.
I just wanted to say that I was inspired by Michael's or Chair Siegel's video he did last year. Or was it 2 years ago? I can't remember.
Many years ago.
Many years ago now. Time flies. And I thought it would be fun to put together a little thing about how our commission composts at home. So I'm asking for everyone to send me a short video clip of you composting at home and what system you use, or if you don't use a system, how you collect it and put it in your bin. And I'm going to compile them into a little video for Earth Day. So, and staff, you can share too if you like, but it's not mandatory.
All right. Yeah, I also wanted to talk about that meeting. It was a long meeting, and although Slow Streets was one of the items that was not as contentious as some of the other ones, it still was fairly contentious. And I agree, a sad day. As part of the NREC, and our focus being on sustainability and the environment, it is. And we just, heard about air pollution and the health impacts of all the, not, the nitrous oxides, the CO2, the VOCs, the particulate matter, all coming off of vehicles are some of the worst in the United States, in this region. That if we were a city that was actually serious about fighting that something as simple as a bike lane would not be contentious. It would just happen, and it would happen all over. And so I think it is a huge step back, because if we can't even do something as simple as that, our very ambitious goals of both this commission and the council will not be realized. And so I think council as a whole has to take a look at what they really want. Do we want to just keep our city exactly as it was from the 1960s, which may be good for some people, or do we want to try and look to the future and actually try to achieve some of these goals that we've laid out in our plan? And so I'll stop there. Can we move on to staff liaison communications? And hopefully you'll be talking about some Earth Day stuff we have coming up.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we are approaching Earth Month, the best month of the year. So we do have a lot of Earth Day events and activities coming up. Most importantly, April 6th is our sustainability fair, garden tour, and plant swap at our wonderful nature park. We have so many things planned for that event. We have LA County coming down and doing a composting workshop during that event, where they'll also be selling discounted compost bins. We have Ags is going to be there demonstrating some electric leaf blowers with electric leaf blower raffle. Our sustainability division is going to be there educating folks on properly separating food scraps, because that's coming up as well. We've got activities for kids. We've got South Pasadena Active doing a wonderful bike valet. Thank you so much. So we've got so many ways for people to join the event, and we're really, really looking forward to everybody coming out to the nature park. If the commission, if any 3 members would like to have a table there, so you can talk to the community and see what's on their mind and what's important to them, do let me know. I'd love to have a table out there for you if you'd like that.
What would be the deadline to let you know?
Monday would be great.
So as someone who is at a different table that day, I will not be able to sit at that table.
Got it.
But if anyone on this commission would like to, Monday's the deadline.
Yes, please let me know. In addition to April 6th, we do have our free compost and mulch giveaway happening on April 13th. This is going to be at the South Pasadena, the Arroyo Golf Course parking lot. So please stop by and bring your own containers and get some beautiful organic compost and some great mulch. In addition to that, the library has a wonderful, and I know I'm going through all of these events right now, but they're all part of Earth Day. The library is through their Sewing South Pasadena program. They have two lectures and happening at the library community room, one on April 1st with Ed Begley Jr. Registration for that event is required, so please check out the flyer in your agenda packet to register for that event. And April 16th, Greening South Pasadena, talking about native flora and fauna with Matthew Tudemez. In addition to that, we are putting together a social media campaign, a challenge, if you will. We're asking our residents and folks in South Pasadena, how do you do Earth Day? So take a picture of what you're doing. If you're composting at home, if you're riding your bike, if you're taking the metro, we want to know and we want to see how you're doing it. So take a picture, post it on your social media, tag City of South Pasadena, and enter a chance to win a prize. I know that we had previously talked about having a film screening. That is an event that we absolutely would love to do, and we've actually decided to keep that for another month because there are lots of events happening in April, and we don't want April to hog all the fun. So we're going to go ahead and have a film screening at the community room sometime in the summer. That is all for our Earth Day event and for my comments. I'm going to pass it on to Ted.
Thanks, RP. Good evening, commissioners. I just have one more event to add to round out the Earth Month. Earlier this month, the council approved an agreement between our city, San Gabriel, and Alhambra with the San Gabriel Valley COG to host the 2024 Active Streets Mission to Mission event. It's no longer called the 626 Golden Streets. That has been changed. So now is the Active Streets Mission to Mission event. And that is going to be Sunday, April 28th, starting at 9 a.m. And like the event 2 years ago, participants can walk, bike, ride, skate, do whatever's legal in the streets between Mission and Meridian down to Marengo Avenue, south to Alhambra, and then continue on to Mission Street in San Gabriel. So hopefully folks can join us for that event. Thanks so much.
One quick question about that. I know last time we talked about how it's the day after the eclectic. And you were still working out details on how they might be tied together on street closures.
Sure. So there won't really be a too much of a street closure for the Eclectic Festival, as I understand it. We're still talking to the Chamber of Commerce on that. They between the Chamber of Commerce and Active SGV have found some cost savings in terms of sharing of rental equipment. And we're in support of that. So they are tied together in terms of some coordinated resources and the days being the evening before and the morning of. But the Chamber of Commerce isn't going to release sponsor a large street closure for their event. So so there is some connection if that answers the
No,
question.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we burned through the upcoming events besides our normal webinars. And so I guess that's it. If there's nothing else, I adjourn this meeting at 8:14 p.m.